Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Wednesday, December 3rd, 2025, a special Judging Freedom with our dear friend Scott Ritter on Pete Hegseth, the self-made war criminal. But first this. History tells us every market eventually falls. Currencies collapse. And look at where we are now. 38 trillion in national debt. Stocks at record highs defying gravity. So what happens next? Groceries, gas, housing, everything's going up. And this dollar, it buys less every day. When the system breaks, your stocks won't save you and your dollars won't either. But one thing will: gold. I've said it on my show for years. Gold survives collapse. Central bankers know this and billionaires know it. That's why they're buying more. Is it too late to buy or is it just the right time? Call my friends at Lear Capital to find out. Ask questions, get the free information. There's no pressure, and that's why I buy my gold and silver from Lear. And right now, you can get up to $20,000 in bonus metals with a qualified purchase. Call 800-511-4620 or go to LearJudgeNap.com today. Scott, welcome here, my dear friend. Thank you especially for this second segment with us this week in light of the rather tumultuous events involving the Secretary of Defense, who refers to himself as the Secretary of War. Before we get to Pete Hegseth, since you are such an astute student of Russia, I want to play a statement that President Putin made shortly before spending 5 hours yesterday with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, and ask you how you interpret it. Please pay attention not only to the words, but also to President Putin's body language. Chris, cut number 12.
We are not planning to go to war with Europe. I've said that 100 times already. But if Europe suddenly wants to go to war with us and starts it, we are ready right now. There can be no doubt about that. The only question is, in what way? If Europe suddenly starts a war with us, I think it will be over very quickly. This isn't Ukraine. With Ukraine, we're acting in a surgical, careful manner, right? So that, well, you get it, right?
Surgical, careful manner, war will be over quickly. Why would he have said something like that within an hour or two of meeting Messrs. Witkoff and Kushner?
Well, before that statement, he made some other statements about, Europe wanting to strategically defeat Russia. How can we even begin to negotiate with such people? He said. I think what you're seeing is a very frustrated Vladimir Putin, frustrated by the fact that Europe is just committing suicide. Remember when the special military operation started, Putin would take phone calls from Macron. He would take phone calls from Merkel. He would listen. People could actually travel to Moscow and meet with him and have discussions. But in the 4 years that have transpired, he doesn't talk to the Europeans anymore because they've basically opted out of rationality, opted out of sanity. And now you have Europe sitting there talking about the head of the military committee, this Italian admiral, talking about preemptive strikes against Russia. And so I think Putin was just frustrated by it all. And his anger showed. It's curious, what he said, because it's something that people just aren't reflecting on reality. Outside of Kazan, there's a factory that is producing 1,000 of the new geranium missiles, Geron 2s and 3s a day, 1,000 a day. Russia will use on a big day against the Ukrainians about 550. Usually it's around 300, 400. Where's the rest of those going? And they've been producing 1,000 a day now for months. They're going into strategic reserve. When Putin says that it'll be over, we're ready right now, understand that Europe has no air defense, none, zero. They've given it all to Ukraine. And Marco Rubio gave away the farm a little while ago, where he said, we'll give them 2 or 3 Patriot systems, and a week later they're all destroyed. Welcome to reality. So all of Europe's air defense have been stripped. All of NATO's air defense have been stripped, sent to Ukraine, where it's been destroyed. there is no defenses. And so right now, what Putin is saying is we can unleash 30,000 drones a day against Europe, and you can't defend yourself, and it won't be surgical. We're just going to take everything out. 30,000 drones a day. They could probably sustain this for 7 to 8 days, 210, 250,000 drones that there's no defense against. And this is in addition to the Oreshnik, which is now operational, the Iskander-S, a long-range version of the Iskander missile, which nobody's talking about, the 9M729, who has its range extended to 1,200 kilometers. Russia can touch every part of Europe with systems that Europe can't defend itself against. So I think Putin was just basically frustrated. It's like, watching a child do stupid things. And after a certain time, you have to say, you're going to fool around. You're going to find out. There will be consequences for your actions, and they'll be severe. And I was putting Europe on notice that if you want to play this game, Russia will resolve this problem instantaneously. No mobilization. Russia doesn't have to take a pause and get a week or two to assemble its forces. They're ready to go right now. They have strategic drone units that have hoarded, a significant number of these Geron 2 drones, and they'll just flood the skies of Europe with weapons that Europe can't defend themselves against. And that's the reality.
Wow. One last question before we get over to the Secretary of Defense. Do you think the Russians take seriously the 2 real estate developers that Trump has dispatched, Witkoff and Kushner? And do you think it's even conceivable that an agreement could come out that would please both President Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky?
Well, first of all, Zelensky doesn't matter. No, why mention his name? He's not a part of this discussion anymore. Neither is Europe. There's only 2 parties that count, and that's Donald Trump and that's Vladimir Putin. And there's only 2 voices that count right now. Notice that Marco Rubio is not part of this process. Also notice that Sergei Lavrov is not part of this process, not because Lavrov's on the outs, but Lavrov's counterpart is Marco Rubio. That's standard diplomacy. We're outside of the standard diplomacy realm right now. We are talking about, big picture economic thinking. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are the guys that can sit down and have the kind of personal, private conversations with Kirill Dmitriev and Ushakov, the presidential advisor to Putin, about these issues. Jared is as close to Donald Trump as Ushakov is to Vladimir Putin. And they're not talking about, the Zelensky and peace plan. They're talking about what happens when the war is over, because I think there's a widespread recognition on the part of Trump's inner circle that the war is over. Russia has won, and there's really not anything that can be done. Trump has told Zelensky, accept the peace deal, because if you don't, there won't be a Ukraine left. And this is the reality. Vladimir Putin's forces right now are prevailing across the battlefield. They're advancing quicker than they've ever done before. They can't be stopped. And they know this. So the only conversation to be had right now is what happens when the shooting's done. See, Russia wants a post-conflict reality that resolves the issue of sanctions, resolves the issue of frozen assets, and resolves the issue of territorial integrity and legitimacy. This means that the conversation they're having right now is, how can we bring this war to an end, get the West to recognize Russia's sovereign control over the 4 new territories of Kherson, Zaporozhye, Donetsk, and Lugansk, and Crimea. No different colored maps. No, we're going to hold on to this until later. Russia owns and controls these territories. How can we lift all the sanctions so that the United States and Russia can engage in the full spectrum of economic interactivity worth trillions of dollars? And how can we get our frozen assets unfrozen so that Russia can once again, with confidence, participate in the international banking system? Because right now, Russia has no confidence in that. This is the talk that Witkoff and Dmitriev are having, that Kushner and Ushakov are having. They're talking about the post-conflict reality where Russia and the United States are global leaders without any restraints, no sanctions, no residual sanctions, no hint of sanctions, no punishment, no nothing. This is the conversation they're having. It's the conversation they have to be having. This is the only conversation.
And then what is the origin of that wacky 28-point plan?
The wacky 28-point plan is a Keith Kellogg invention. This is a residual Marco Rubio, Keith Kellogg, to get Europe engaged. But Europe doesn't engage responsibly. This is the first thing that Trump saw, is that when first of all, the 28-point plan was leaked It wasn't the whole plan. There's a whole bunch more to this plan than that's there. It was leaked for the purpose of undermining European confidence in this peace process, to tear it apart. And Trump is fed up. Why do you think Rubio's not in Moscow? Because the 28-point peace plan, it doesn't exist in reality. There's aspects of it that they don't see eye to eye on. So they're focusing on that which they do see eye to eye on. And this is the reality that they're talking about. And I think Witkoff and Kushner came out of there confident that that they are headed in the right path, that there will be a peace. It's not going to be a negotiated peace. It's going to be unconditional surrender on the part of the Ukrainians with some residual guarantees. It'll quickly go away. I've read deep into this plan, and what Europe thinks they're going to get and what Ukraine thinks they're going to get are two totally different things than what reality is going to dictate.
All right, moving over to Pete Hegseth, I'm going to play three tapes for you. One is Pete when I knew him and worked with him at Fox News. He appears to be giving a speech to an audience, not a Fox product. And in it, he says that illegal orders should not be obeyed. The second is Pete Hegseth the day after the attack on this boat, in which first the boat was destroyed and then the second attack resulted in the killing of the two survivors. That's Pete talking to his and my former colleagues on Fox and Friends the morning after. The third is Pete trying to obfuscate what he knew and when he knew it at a cabinet meeting yesterday. We're going to play all three of these together. Collectively, it's less than a minute. Chris, number 18.
There are some guys at Leavenworth who made really bad choices on the battlefield. And I do think there have to be consequences for abject war crimes. If you're doing something that is just completely unlawful and ruthless, then there is a consequence for that. That's why the military said it won't follow unlawful orders from their commander-in-chief. There's a standard, there's an ethos, there's a belief that we are above what so many things that our enemies or others would do.
I watched it live. We knew exactly who was in that boat, we knew exactly what they were doing, and we knew exactly who they represented.
I watched that first strike live. As you can imagine, at the Department of War, we got a lot of things to do. So I didn't stick around for the hour and 2 hours, whatever, where all the sensitive site exploitation digitally occurs. So I moved on to my next meeting. I did not personally see survivors, but I stand, because the thing was on fire. It was exploded and fire and smoke. You can't see anything. You got digital. This is called the fog of war.
All right, your reactions from what we have seen of him, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into what is expected of professional military men and women.
First thing you have to understand is Pete Hegseth knows he committed a crime. He knows this in his heart of hearts. So because we saw that in 2016, he knows what the law of war is. He knows what the Department of Defense law of war manual says, and he knows what the duty and responsibility of officers and enlisted men who have taken an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. He knows that you can't obey an unlawful order. He knows this. I think people need to realize that here we are the first week of December. The incident we're talking about took place on September 2nd. At that time, the commander overseeing this was a lieutenant or a vice admiral named Frank Bradley. He was a commander of Joint Special Operations Command. The Tier 1 Commando Unit operates out of Fort Bragg. They had operational control here. And there was an ethos at play. It's sort of interesting to hear Hegseth talk about an ethos that, let's go back. Do you remember when Hegseth summoned 800 flag officers and senior enlisted and put them in Quantico? He made a
fool of himself trying to pretend he was George Patton.
Correct. But basically, the problem with that speech is that it can be used at trial and probably will be used at trial to show intent, because there's two war crimes that took place on September 2nd. The first war crime was the order from Trump through Hegseth to kill them all, take no prisoners. And if you listen to that speech and parse it down, he's talking about we're not going to be held by ridiculous rules of engagement. Our job is lethality. We're going to go in there, we kill things, we break things. This is what we do. We ask for forgiveness later kind of attitude. Stupid speech, criminal. But it appears that, again, the president echoed the same sentiment. And then you have a situation where the orders have been given. Now, the commander of JSOC at the time, Bradley, he comes from an organization, SEAL Team 6, that has huge ethical problems. These are guys that canoed people. You can Google that if you want to. Talk about Robert O'Neill and what he did to Osama bin Laden. He didn't kill him. He just blew his head open. It's just a SEAL trademark, a red team trademark. These people murder people. They committed horrific crimes in Iraq and in Afghanistan that have been covered up. The SEALs are a corrupt organization, morally, ethically corrupt. And so here you have this guy, Vice Admiral Bradley, who came through SEAL Team 6 from 1999 up through 2015, was a participant in a command function in all of the crimes committed by SEAL Team 6. And now he's there, and he's been told by Hegseth to kill them all. And so he did. And on September 2nd, in violation of law of war, he ordered a second strike. And remember, this wasn't in the fog of war instantaneous. Hegseth condemns himself. Hours of digital sensitive site exploitation. That means that they were poring over the video. They saw the survivors, and they killed them with a deliberate second strike designed to kill these people. It's a complete and utter violation of the law of war. You can't do it. They are hors de combat. They're out of the fight. There's no gray zone here. This is black and white war crime that was committed by a Navy SEAL giving orders to SEAL Team 6, who long ago forgot what their ethics are. Now, he was replaced on September 23rd. Bradley was promoted up. I think he's the commander of Special Operations Command today. He was replaced by Lieutenant General Jonathan Braga. Braga's Delta Force, completely different beast. And Braga did a complete revamp of the way JSOC operates because of the September 2nd crime, which resonated throughout the chain. I'm just here to tell you right now, everybody knew a war crime had been committed. And this is why Braga changed the whole approach. And on October 26th, maybe, there was a strike against a narco-trafficking submarine. And they blew it up, and lo and behold, there's 2 survivors. And JSOC helicopters come in and rescue them and take them to a ship. See, the whole operating procedure changed because you had an ethical leader come in and say, we don't kill them all. We obey the law of war. This is how we operate. And, so again, Hegseth has to be careful here because this case will not survive trial. He will be found guilty of 2 war crimes, and he will be, a clear element. You know this, Judge. Intent is everything. What is your intent? Did you intend to commit a crime?
Right.
He intended to commit a crime. So did Bradley. They knew what they were doing was wrong, but they had this ethical foundation that said it doesn't matter. We're America. We're We're the new military. We're tough. We're bad. We kill them all. Well, you may go to jail for the rest of your life, Pete Hegseth, and you should.
Here's him condemning stupid rules of engagement in that rather flamboyant speech to all of the flag officers a few months ago. Chris, number 7.
We unleash overwhelming and punishing violence on the enemy. We also don't fight with stupid rules of engagement. We untie the hands of our warfighters to intimidate, demoralize, hunt, and kill the enemies of our country. No more politically correct and overbearing rules of engagement. Just common sense, maximum lethality, and authority for warfighters. That's all I ever wanted as a platoon leader. And it's all my E6 squad leaders ever wanted, back to that E6 rule. We let our leaders fight their formations, and then we have their back. It's very simple, yet incredibly powerful.
He just condemned himself, Judge. You know that. If I played that tape before you at trial, the intent to kill, the intent to be lethal, the intent to disregard rules, law, maximum lethality. He just condemned himself. He is guilty as charged. He's a dead man walking.
Here's a White House reporter asking the press secretary, who's not a military person and she's not a lawyer, was the second follow-up strike lawful? Chris, number 9.
You said that the follow-up strike was lawful. What law is it that allows no survivors?
The strike conducted on September 2nd was conducted in self-defense to protect Americans in vital United States interests. The strike was conducted in international waters and in accordance with the law of armed conflict.
She did was read a statement that somebody wrote for her, but it is ludicrous for them to suggest self-defense. These two guys are clinging to some pieces of wood that 2 hours before was their boat. What threat are they?
No, I've been, reading a lot, and we are dealing with the fog of journalism right now because there's a lot of cover up taking place, a lot of panicked people. But what's clear is that the President of the United States, working with Department of Justice lawyers, has crafted a legal argument that makes these narco traffickers a threat to the United States that justifies military intervention. Okay, so, you and I can argue that and all that stuff, but the bottom line is, if I'm a military commander, understand you're not allowed to obey an unlawful order. But if the order that comes to you, you have to presume is lawful, and it's gone through, a Department of Justice review, and you have the Attorney General of the United States signing off saying you're allowed to hit these boats and kill them, treat them as the enemy. That's an order you must obey. You don't get to judge the constitutionality of that. So this initial strike that was done, you and I can both disagree with that outcome. I believe that it's wrong and all that, but the president has lawyers who has come up with specific wording drawn from the law of warfare manual that gives authority to carry out these strikes. That's fine. The moment the ship is sunk, the moment you have survivors in the water, there is no debate here. This is law that comes down from experiences from the Second World War, where I think the Lanconia, a ship that was sunk by the Germans, contained Allied and Italian prisoners of war, thousands in the water. German subs surfaced to rescue them, but then U.S. bombers came in and attacked them, and they abandoned these people. German officers, submarine commanders, were arrested after the war, not because of this, because of other things, and tried and executed for shooting sailors in the water. Americans, the video that I saw as a second lieutenant, American submariners shooting Japanese merchant sailors in the water, because that's what we did. In 1949, the world said, this is not what we do. We don't do this. And the specific, straight up, if you're in the water, you're out of the fight. There's no debate about it. There's no gray zone. There's nothing. You are out of the fight. You're in the water and you are protected. And it doesn't matter if you're a merchant marine, a sailor, or a narco trafficker. You're in the water. You're out of the fight. You must be rescued. And that's where this is patently unlawful. What she did, she just doesn't know what she's talking about, frankly speaking.
What happens to Hegseth next? The DOJ is not going to prosecute. It'll be up to Trump to fire him.
There might be enough political pressure put on Trump that he has to fire Pete Hegseth, and then Pete Hegseth will get a pardon. He won't go to trial. This, and neither will Bradley. Bradley may be relieved of command, but this won't go to trial. Who else?
Bradley should, in light of what you told us about Bradley's ethos, Bradley should be tried. It should be a public court-martial.
It should be, but it won't be, because to do that, then you'd have to bring in Hegseth and Trump. Remember, Trump is implicated here because Trump has given multiple speeches about kill them all, kill all of them, kill them, kill them, kill them. That's commander's intent right there. But remember, the people that actually did it are the SEAL Team 6 operators. They're criminals as well. They won't be tried. But they've gone too far into this. I do think that there is going to be congressional inquiry, and the data will come out. There's a reason why we rescued 2 people on October 26th. And the reason is the military system, which is staffed by honorable men and women who know the difference between right and wrong. They recognized that something horrible had happened, that the United States had committed a horrific war crime, and the system cleaned itself. The system put in place new rules of engagement. Fortunately, we had a very morally grounded officer, General Braga, Delta Force, who said, this is what we have to do. And they cleaned it up. But there will be a record. There's a record of investigation. There's a reason why U.S. Southern Command Admiral resigned and retired, because of this crime, this war crime. The whole system knows that something very bad happened, and the truth will come out. There is a record, a document of people questioning this strike, because you don't change your rules of engagement and your operating procedures on a whim. There had to be a reason. There's a reason why General Braga rescued 2 people and Admiral Bradley killed 2 people.
Here's a reporter in the White House press corps who has her finger on exactly what you just said. Chris, number 5.
So much of the concern from Democrats and Republicans is focused on the survivors. Why won't the administration either confirm or deny or reveal whether or not there were survivors after that initial first strike? And what imminent threat would 2 survivors pose who were clinging presumably to the wreckage of that boat?
Again, as I said, I think you guys are sort of not listening fully to the statement I've provided. Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was totally destroyed and the threat to the narco-terrorists, to the United States, was eliminated. And for any further questions about his thinking, I would defer you to the Department of War. I obviously wasn't in the room for these.
Just to follow up, Caroline, just on the administration's policy when it comes to survivors, was there a change in policy after this strike on September 2nd? The Washington Post is reporting that these 2 survivors were killed after a second strike, but then in October, 2 people were rescued and returned to Colombia and Ecuador. So was there a decision that was made to handle survivors differently after these strikes?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Well, she
Yes,
just
there
read a
was.
statement that Stephen Miller probably wrote for her.
Yeah, well, she's not knowledgeable. First of all, again, in defense of her, she only can act on what she's been given. She's not
Correct.
a thinker. She's not. You know, her
Correct.
job is to read what she's been handed to her. But the fact is too that we're dealing with JSOC. You have to sign a non-disclosure agreement, or at least you used to have to sign a non-disclosure agreement, even though they existed. And everything about them, every procedure they do, every operation is classified top secret, because these are the tier 1, hostage rescue team, special operators. And so she won't know about internal doings. She won't know about the internal dynamic, what happened in the SEAL team. When these guys came back to their team room, the conversations they had, I can guarantee you that the morally inclined members of this team were not happy with what happened, and they reported up their chain of command, and it got to Bradley, and Bradley was in trouble because he understood that war crimes had been committed. And a process began that was then continued by Lieutenant General Braga when he came in to rapidly review and put in place new operating procedures so that the helicopters don't destroy the damaged, sunk, or debris and kill people. The helicopters rescue them. This became standard operating procedure. This doesn't happen in a vacuum, but the identities of these people, the designation, the tactics used, etc., are all classified top secret. And she won't know anything about this.
Well, Scotty, thank you very much, my dear friend. I did not know about General Braga. That is newsworthy, at least from our perspective, and it's great of you to have shared it with us. And thank you for double duty this week. And thank you for all your time, as always. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay, thanks, Judge.
Sure. All the best. Coming up tomorrow, a full and busy day for you. At 8 in the morning, Colonel Tony Schaefer. At 11 in the morning, Colonel Douglas McGregor. At 1 in the afternoon, Professor Glenn Deason. At 2 in the afternoon, Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. At 3 in the afternoon, Professor John Mearsheimer. At 4 in the afternoon, Pepe Escobar. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.